Hi, I am Vishal Bhatia, and today I'm going to talk about proactive defense DDoS. This presentation aims to provide an overview of how to enable organizations having actionable items in defining their DDoS strategy. It also aims at evaluating controls within the organization and to know its environment, its defenses, and gap. Though many organizations are having layered defense approach, and that is the key against such attacks. But a proactive defense is ideally assumed to be more of a automated tool or a technical solution. But it's not about technical solution. It's all about knowing your business, knowing your people, knowing your processes, and technology as well. So what I'm trying to say over here is we need to understand the entire business dynamics as a whole. The agenda for this presentation is, of course, long story short. So I just want to take you back in the 80s or 90s and then how IT has been transformed. What are the risks which we have seen? Maybe second slide talks about more of DDoS attack and mitigation. It's more of a sample illustration. How security leaders needs to align with the business. That is something which is very important. Most of the time organizations believe, or maybe people in the organizations have a constant feedback that security are more of a showstopper. But my presentation aims in changing that gambit, that we need to align ourselves from security to business, how we build proactive defense. So this is more of overview about how I'm going to build a DDoS defense strategy and what are the proactive steps which I need to take to ensure that I am adequately protected. What to do during an intrusion. So this slide illustrates more about what is something which I need to do in case if I am under attack, and some of the tips in my next slide, which talks about investigation and aftermath of an attack. Last slide talks about outcome-based security. So most of the time, the entire theme is, when we talk about long story short, what DDoS attack happens, how do I align myself to business, what is my proactive defense, what to do during attack, how to get out of the attack, and how I need to ensure that align myself to the security. Now, in long story short, what I want to take back is basically internet today is a widespread of information infrastructure, but also has a history which is complex and involves many aspects of its influence. If its influence reaches not only to the technical fields, but also to the people of the society as we move. Majority of the time, leaders want to talk about what's the future. But in this slide, I would like to talk about the top 5 events in the history, because I believe to predict the future, it is important to know our past. The industry was born in the 70s to 90s, was more of a personal computer, which was purely transaction-based activities, and all computer-related activities revolved around interaction between person to computer. The major leap happened specifically when the pieces were connected to LAN or WAN. With wide area network as well as the World Wide Web, there came the search engines. The search engines, internet consolidated itself into a very powerful platform. That changed the entire dynamics of the way we do business, the way we communicate, the way we live our life, how connected we are into this global environment. And internet, like no other communication means, has given globalized dimension to the way we actually do the business as well. It has become more of a universal source for millions of people at home, millions of people at school, millions of people the way we work. It has also changed, from outsourcing. There has been a boom in outsourcing as well, through which we then came the data centers, the cloud, and the new way of delivering IT and big data. That also changed a new attitude towards data, from where we had the privacy laws into the picture and its potential value. And now we have Internet of Things connected billions and billions of devices, which combine everything and we sketch everything. That is what the future of IT is all about. But internet overall has been more of a democratic institution, I would say. A person with a very low investment, specifically in here in India, can almost do business at a very large scale, and he can reach directly to the market, no matter whatever the size of the business is. We are seeing lot many companies who are more of a street companies having their own website, they have their own reach, they have their own visibility, they have their own market share, they have their own preferred customer. But with good, there has always been a flip side. And it started not only in, it's not now, it's all about 1988 to 90s only. And there came the entry of DDoS or the hacks, I would say. And that actually happened by an accident when Robert Morris developed a program to assess the size of the internet. And unfortunately, problem arose for Morris when he struggled to ensure accuracy. Morris made a command that forced the computer to install itself on the computer itself, and it went into an endless loop. Even after the PC claimed that it has installed the program, with each installation, the infected computer would become further drained, and finally it will crash. And that's basically majority of the traits of a DDoS. So one of the characteristics of DDoS is to test the limits of a particular web server or an application server, and ensuring that it utilizes its entire resource by sending spikes in fake traffics. So DDoS attacks are usually an army of zombies and devices, which is called as botnets. These botnets generally consist of compromised web services, website, computers, or IoT devices nowadays. And this is also being used in cyber warfare. So if you actually have a look at the media news, few of them which I have picked up for you, which is on Forbes, specifically 9th Feb or 5th December. It talks about powerful cyber attack takes down 25% of Iranian internet. China fires up Great Canyon denial of service blaster, points it towards Hong Kong. GitHub is quite known. Occupancy Central Hong Kong 500 Gbps. Cloudflare 400 Gbps. So these are the type of DDoS attacks which have been really, really destructive and very powerful in nature. To date, I would like to also say that there has no been outright cyber war as such. However, there have been a number of instances which I'm trying to illustrate in this diagram that have caused serious disruption to countries' infrastructure, and that has been suspected at this point of time has been carried out by another state. The impact of this is, of course, availability and business loss, which impacts the economy of the country, which impacts the company as well. And what's the point in having security when there is no business? So that's the reason, with the change in business dynamics and data being the new oil, organizations are more and more prone to cyber attacks. And I believe cyber program needs to align itself to the business. That is what I'm trying to cover in my next slide. But at the same time, I would just like to give you an overview of how a high level DDoS attack actually happens. And my next slide talks about an illustration which talks about the how a DDoS attack is actually, it's a high level overview of a DDoS attack. And this illustration ideally shows a normal way of traffic which covers in an ideal solution until a DDoS attack actually occurs. Now, when this happens, as you have talked about, any solution which or any company would ideally go for a specific limited size of bandwidth. Based on that, they would ideally design what is the DDoS mitigation traffic and what is the IP number of pool they need to assign. So this illustration talks about a company which already has a DDoS solution, although I haven't talked about more of what type of solution they have. Do they have an inline or offline solution, or it's a cloud mitigated solution? But it ideally talks about what a DDoS as a service would actually do at that point of time when they are under attack. So illustration shows normal traffic, which is ideally in gray color, and it just is all about a normal traffic flow until a pool of DDoS attack occurs towards a destined IP pool. When this happens, we are normally define manage objects in the system, which is constantly taking feeds. And this is what I'm trying to say. It just takes feed from the traffic, and it just senses basically what traffic type it's all about. As soon as the system detects a network anomaly, it will subsequently trigger an alert in the system. Then the system will advertise a more specific route announcement, thereby diverting the traffic destined in the DDoS mitigation system for appropriate surgical mitigation. Mitigation system ideally will inspect the traffic. In case if suppose there is a dirty traffic, the dirty traffic will be dropped and the clean traffic will be sent back to the reinjection router. Now this is where the off-prem and the on-prem on-ramping solution would look into. So I'm just trying to illustrate an overview, a very, very high level overview. There are many things which happens at the back of the screen, to ensure that we how do we do the traffic diversion, how do we do the reinjection, how do we make sure we do either even if a decision for black holing has been taken, what needs to be done. Ideally, traffic reinjection usually requires tunneling and alternate routing domain to get clean traffic back to the intended destination without looping. The clean traffic then will be forwarded to the router, and finally it will reach towards the destination. So when the system detects that the DDoS has stopped, lastly, it will withdraw more specific routes and announcement, and it will subsequently update all the BGP routes and send traffic towards the managed object, and the flow will be as usual. So in this illustration, what I'm trying to highlight you is what happens in an ideal situation, what happens when a DDoS attack happens, what type of attack it is. Based on that, how DDoS system reacts, how manage objects basically triggers and alerts, what type of mitigation capacity needs to be looked upon, how mitigation happens, what type of decision needs to be taken into an account, and how we are going to make sure that, in case if suppose we have to send a clean traffic or we just need to re-inject, how that is going to happen. Most of the time organizations have DDoS solution of an ISP level. Some of them have an in-prem solution, some of them have a hybrid solution, some of them have a cloud solution, and over and above, the organizations also prefer to have uh, additional insurance type of a system, which majorly is, rather than having an in-prem costly DDoS solution, they outsource their entire pool and IP addresses and range to an application DNS to an outsourced vendor or probably a cloud-based solution. During that point of time, this is more of a cloud-based solution where an API call can be made to the scrubbing provider, and that will clean the traffic even before it enters to you. So this is how basically a DDoS attack and the mitigation happens. But before you make any of the strategy, one of the things which needs to be looked into place is how you actually design this entire solution. It's not easy, as I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to pass on the entire knowledge to best of my abilities which I can, so that we can just ensure that we align ourselves to business and we design a solution which is totally based on business priorities and not on the technology priorities. So that is where I'm trying to say, as a security leader, one needs to ensure that he has to align himself or align his security program with business. And although I understand vision, mission, value, strategy is important, but it's all about the big picture. And mapping security to an organization's key business objective is an excellent way to add security where it's needed the most. And it will actually drive excellent outcomes as well when it's done the right way. So as I said, apart from vision, mission, values, and strategy, we also need to understand how I'm going to protect my organization and its brand variety. What is my business's priority? How am I managing the business risk? Do I have appropriate controls in place to avoid the risk, reduce the risk, transfer the risk, or accept the risk as well? Apart from that, how am I aligning my cybersecurity program to business, as well as how I'm making sure that I have taken into consideration all the country-specific privacy laws and regulations as well. This is something I would also be emphasizing in my last slide, because I believe any security has to be outcome based. Until and unless we don't have mapping of our security, we don't have the KPIs and the KRA of security, it will be very difficult for us to judge how security is adding value to the business, and how what is something which we are doing and as part of our outcome based security. So that is where I believe it's very important to ensure that we align our cybersecurity programs to business. We understand the privacy laws, we also understand what is the important factors for my business to continue. At the same time, we need to ensure that security should be embedded to each and every process in a way that will accelerate things instead of slowing them down. And as I said, most of the time the perception is securities are the showstopper. We need to change that perception, saying that no, we are not the showstopper, we are the business enabler. And rather than degrading productivity and time to market, we should add value to ensure that we have a better product rollouts in this. So this is something which we need to ensure that we align ourselves from security perspective to business, so that we can add value to it, and we can also ensure that it's each and every product rollouts which we have, or each and every priorities which we have from business perspective, has support from security, has clearances from security. Now, I have already talked about the DDoS attack, the mitigation, aligning ourselves to the business. You already have some vision as well as a strategy in place. You know about how what all need to do in terms of protecting business, in terms of protecting brand value, in terms of ensuring that we have a business risk, cyber alignment program, and privacy. So the next slide which I'm moving to is slide number 4, proactive defense. And while leading a proactive defense program, the most important factor will be to know your organization. And that is something which I have always and already been highlighted. But at the same time, I think the second topic which I need to talk about is SWOT analysis. Ideally, business do have their SWOT analysis, but as part of your strategic planning, it's always advisable we also do our SWOT analysis, so that we are very well aligned to the business as well. In information security, a analysis can be useful for developing a better understanding of the security environment. And in fact, it can also support business in its overarching strategy by giving insights of what is something which we need to do from security aspects, what are the risks which we are highlighting, how are we compliant, what is something which we are trying to understand from information security, cyber laws, privacy perspective, what are the issues which we are trying to bring in from the business, what are the challenges we as security have, and how we are making sure that we are aligning them with business. So that is something which is very important in the information technology as well as business as a whole. We can always start with identifying the critical assets as well as ensuring that what are my current compliance level of assessment which needs to be performed. Ideally, I recommend doing this type of exercise annually, so that we have our critical assets, we know the risk, we know the compliance level, we know what is the security posture, we know how assurance has been done. Do we have an appropriate level of framework to assess my security? The second thing which I want to talk about is my cyber insurance as well as the cyber assessment. This basically provides a very high level analysis of your organization as well as risk base from technology perspective, from people perspective, from process perspective, to facilitate the identification and classification of risk. Now, that's something which I believe is very, very important. But most of the time now, since we have dependency on the vendors as well, the important thing, and I believe the important takeaway for everybody needs to be, how is the organization making sure that their vendor risk is also being taken into consideration? What type of programs we have in place, what type of formal system we have in place to evaluate our vendors, to evaluate our partners, to ensure that they have smooth operations and they're adding value from operations perspective. So it is recommended from my end, rather than being stuck on a price, one should focus on the quality of service. That's the most effective way to turn fear into confidence. And one of the best things which I always highlight is, if you need to turn your fear into confidence, you need to be sure of what needs to be protected, and you need to be very, very clear of what needs to be protected. Because before you're trying to decide on the best solution, what is the right solution for you, whether it's an in-house solution, whether it's a cloud solution, whether it's a hybrid solution, you need to be very clear of what needs to be protected. That is the reason for that you need to identify the right program, choose the right program so that you can choose the right solution, because DDoS overall is actually a very costly affair. I consider DDoS to be an insurance. When it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it's the product is of no use at all. But when it happens, it destroys the entire infrastructure. So I don't think there is any straightforward answer to this, and I don't think there is any straightforward strategy to this. But at the same time, it's important, you choose your product the right way, you choose your product based on your strategy, based on your business decisions, based on your criticality. Now, that is where, apart from that, the solution which you're choosing has to have a layered defense in depth model. Now, until unless you don't have a layered defense in depth model, it will be very difficult for any of the security strategies to align what should be my where should be my attack layer, what should be my defense layer, what should be my monitoring layer, and where my application needs to be hosted, how my DMZ is secure. So we need to ensure that we have designed a layered level of DDoS protection, and what needs to be protected is very important. Do you want to, there is no point in having applications which are not even internet facing, being aligned in your manage object for the DDoS pool. So that is something which needs to be looked upon from security monitoring and optimization, how your organization is monitoring, what type of efficiency levels which is there in your organization to make sure that your security monitoring as well as tool optimization there. Are your teams capable of identifying a DDoS attack? Are they well educated in terms of understanding what is something which is a DDoS attack? Do they know what needs to be done? What are the security controls testing which are there in place, that how your DDoS testing and what needs to do, how they need to react, in terms of when there is a DDoS attack. So that is something which is part of your proactive defense. Apart from that, once you are under attack, what is your plan for recovery? What is your disaster recovery plan? What's your business continuity plan? How you're going to communicate to your stakeholders? How you're going to communicate to your customers? What is the plan in place? What is the communication means in place? These some things requires lots and lots of planning. Who needs to be involved? At what time it needs to be involved? How he needs to be involved? Where he needs to be involved? What are the areas which he needs to be looked upon? Who has got what role? This is something which is very important as part of your strategy, because until unless we don't have these things in place during attack, all we are going to do is panic, and there will be very less time for reaction under this time. That is the reason I always emphasize on governance and assurance. By governance, we can ensure that we know what needs to be done. By assurance, we know that whether whatever we have done, has it done the right way? Is it delivering expected results? And on the dose sides, which I believe is don'ts, is the pure don'ts. I believe one should never let your vendor decide what's right for you. Vendors possibly are here to sell the products. They are doing their job. They are doing their job absolutely great. But you need to know what is right for you. You need to decide what's right for you. Don't implement solution just to comply with the requirements or to just satisfy the regulators. This is the worst thing which you can do. It's just the entire waste of your hard-earned money. To comply, regulators will always tell you to comply with the requirements with the best practice, but what is something which we need to comply with, how we need to comply with, what is the best practice we need to put in place, how we are making sure that whatever controls which I have put in place is delivering results, is something which neither the regulator nor the vendor will tell you. It's something which you need to decide. You need to map your KPIs and KRAs. Second thing which I believe, don't design solutions which are half-baked. This is something which I believe is not right. The reason I'm saying so is right from the company, right from the vendor, even OEMs need to understand whether the products which they have made for their customer are giving expected results or not. So if I design a half-baked solution, and even if that solution doesn't work for me, I won't be able to give feedback to the vendors, nor those vendors will be able to give feedback to the OEMs how their what is the deficiency or what is the issues with their product. Based on that, there won't be adequate environment to make sure that they enhance the product or they enhance that feature. So that is the reason. Ensure that you utilize your products to the optimum. You ensure that you complete the solution fully, and you make sure that it's been designed to perform. That is something which I believe needs to be looked upon. And the last thing which I believe everyone should not do is overcommit. There is nothing called as 100% protection. Everything is a risk-based solution. You need to decide what's right for you. You need to ensure that you know what needs to be looked upon. 100% commitment is something which is a disaster. So this is something which I'm talking about proactive defense and what needs to be looked upon. This next slide talks about intrusion. In this slide, I would be talking about now you are under attack, and that is what this slide talks about. So the scenario right now which I have is that your security has been breached. You know this is a very bad situation. Everybody knows it's a bad situation, and there is no time to waste now. You need to act as soon as possible to do as much damage control you can, you know, at this point of time. Nevertheless, there are few critical steps that I think you need to look into when these type of attack occurs. First is identify what type of attack is. Uh, Stay calm. Check for false positive. Until unless we are not sure of whether it's actually an attack or it's just a spurge and spike, can I control it? I'm not staying calm. I'm not checking the false positive. It will be very difficult for me to basically, check into what is something which I am doing. Is it something, is it some type of alert? Do I need to even look into, or is it something which my DDoS system is capable of detecting, and is it something which is a continuous effort? How many spikes have been searches? How many IPs have been breached at this point of time? Is it the continuous pattern of network anomaly, or is it something which just happening in bits and pieces? What is the timing? Which IPs are there? Which states are there? What are the countries which have been involved? Can I just block it by just defining an access list? Can I just do something which can which through which my DDoS system just blocks them? Or is it something which just needs a higher level of mitigation? That is something which you need to look upon. In case if suppose there is an absolute surge and spike, there is absolutely no control, then I think you are moving towards a potential disaster. So the best thing to do at that point of time is to declare it as an incident. Now, still, if the attacks doesn't stop, we from that potential attack, you can actually declare it to an actual attack, and that is a time when you need to contact your business continuity team, and then in turn, then you can start with your communication channels. You can start with your activating of mitigation plans. You can start contacting your vendors and ISP, and this is the most important time because when this type of attack happens, there will be a constant surge in traffic, there will be a constant spike. Possibilities are also there that you might have a volumetric attack. There is also a possibility that you might have a application based attack. It's very difficult at this point of time to judge what type of attack you are actually facing, but of course there are uh, you know uh, some level of indications which you can either see from your sniffer or some of the devices, or even the DDoS system will let you know whether it's what type of attack is it state execution attack, is it application layer attack, is it a volumetric attack, are we having just connections being sessions being established and after that there is nothing which is happening, is it just a connectionless attack, is it just an application DNS type of attack, or it's just a volumetric attack. Volumetric attack nowadays are quite I would say manageable in terms of if I have a proper QoS defined, but if not, then I think we need to see have take guidance from our vendor as well as ISP for the mitigation strategy. Based on input received, you can decide whether should I be diverting the traffic to the scrubbing center. Depends on what type of solution you have put in place. If you have already shortlisted auto mitigation, then the solution will do itself what it needs to be done. If you need to inject specific routes, you can take a call. It depends how your quality of service as well as your access list have been defined. What is something which you need to do in terms of do we have your access list ready also, or do we have your diversion also ready with you. So that is something which is called, which individual organizations to take. In terms of reinjection routes, how you need to do it. Do you want to go for, this is where your off ramping and on ramping will come into the place, and what's the benefit, what is the type of clean pipe solution if a organization has subscribed for. That is something which is required, and that is where the amount of bandwidth and what is the upload traffic which you have is important. Last, you need to check basically if legitimate traffic is not getting blocked. What happens at this point of time, when we try to assign routes, when we try to build more access list, at that time unintentionally, due to I would say the subnet mask challenges or the wildcard challenges, I end up blocking the routes which are legitimate, or maybe the traffic which is legitimate. So that is something which needs to be looked upon. What is something which I'm doing, am I doing it the right way? So that is something which needs to be taken care of. In terms of when the attack happens, one of the best things to look upon for future references is to document each and every step at the time of attack. That helps you to see how much time has been utilized, how much time is been wasted, how much time has been productive, what are the things which I did. So try to have document each and every timestamp at the time of attack and its mitigation to ensure that what I've done and what not. In terms of, in case if suppose the attack surge is more, or something which you believe is you are unable to uh, look into in terms of the attack, and you already have a solution in place, and the attack grows large enough to saturate your connection to the internet, I think the best way would be to go for a cloud solution. Ideally, this is basically a subscription based model which many of the cloud service providers send. They are you can get 2 mitigations, 5 mitigations, 12 mitigations in a year depending on the type of subscription you build, and these are purely an API call which needs to be made to a cloud serving provider, which can be cleaned up before the traffic enters. And but for that you need to be ready with advertising your IPs to the and pool to the service provider. It is not something which can be done during the time of DDoS attack. So it is an advanced subscription based model which needs to be looked upon before the DDoS attack happens, because this things takes time. There is a there is a cooling period which is required. There is also a traffic sensing pattern which is required. And once you say, then once you activate the subscription based model, then only the activation happens. So it is not something which you, when the attack is there, you go and buy it on-prem. The do's are very straightforward. Worst thing to do is don't panic. Don't panic or waste your time. This is something which is very important. Until unless you're not calm, it will be very difficult for you to take decisions. And decision making is really, really important under the attack situation. Second thing which I emphasize is part of effective team building. Don't go out of the line. Don't break the chain of command. You and your team are already being panicking. Just stop it. Don't go out of the line, or don't break the chain of command. While it may be easier, said than done, but it's important for everybody in the team to just stay calm and work together. Second thing which I always talk about is don't spread rumors or talk about information which we don't have. Best thing to do is to stay calm, to just be disciplined, and let the right person talk about what is happening and what not happening. We might not be having the full picture. So that is something which is very important. In terms of transferring the traffic to the scrubbing center, in case if you don't have an automated solution or you don't have any plan in place at that point of time, best is let the right person take the call what needs to be done. Maybe you can get in touch with your ISP, maybe you can get in touch with your routing expert, maybe you can get in touch with your NOC team, or maybe even the ISP at this point of time. Take their advice, take their input, what needs to be done, and after that whatever decision needs to be taken, but don't delay. This has to be done over a period of time, and I would suggest in minutes. So that is something which needs to be looked upon. The next thing which I have always been saying, don't overcommit. Don't go provide false assurances where something which we cannot do is being done. That is something which is not the right thing to do. There is nothing called as 100% protection. There is no guarantee that even if the attack is over, it will not happen again. So that is something which best is to just stay calm at this point of time and don't provide any false assurances. Don't commit anything. Just focus on the problem statement right now. And lastly, which I keep telling everybody, don't accuse people of finding faults in each other. Rather, this is a time to focus on the problem. This is a time to focus on the attack. Rather than accusing each other, we are just diverting from the problem. We need to ensure that we focus on the problem, we solve it, and after that we look into what the gaps are. So this is something which I believe needs to be done during intrusion. My next slide talks about how the investigation and aftermath is being done in case if there is an attack, and what can we do to ensure that we don't repeat it, or at least even if it happens the next time, we are better prepared. So slide 6 talks about investigation and aftermath. Now, a successful DDoS attack, which I believe should never happen, but even if it happens, might cause a major damage to your business. This is something which is guaranteed. It will ensure that the website or even the business, it's destroyed. So it can affect your bottom line as well as the business standing. It can also affect the customer trust. It can also ensure that even your customer confidence is being breached. So the impact of security breach can broadly be divided into three categories, which I say. It can be financial, it can be reputational, and sometimes it can also be legal, depending on what the business has committed to the customer. So that is something which I believe is very, very important for you guys to consider, how much you know your organization and what type of solution we want to avoid any legal penalties, to avoid any reputational penalties, to avoid any financial penalties. Once the attack is over, try to analyze it as much detail as possible. The more you analyze, the more traffic patterns will come. The more you realize, the more attack patterns will come. The more you realize, you will come to know basically where the attack has originated, which states were involved, what countries were involved, did we have the right plan in place to block those IP addresses, why did it happen, why us and why not somebody else. There are many questions which needs to be answered at this point of time, but it requires a bit of time, it requires a bit of planning, it requires a bit of deep analyzing, as well as making sure that we look into each and every aspect of that. But at the same time, I don't expect people to overanalyze as well, so that I will come to it later. But the what I'm trying to highlight over here is we need to ensure that whatever we think is really being articulated, we have the right logic in place, we have the right approach in place, we have the right substance in place, and we also have the right evidences in place. Next, we need to also look upon what all systems are there, and is the attack over. In case if all the systems are intact, we know all the IPs have been specifically cleaned, then we have a significant level of assurance that the attack is over, and once the attack is over, the traffic is been diverted to the original. That is a time, but most likely companies keep their routes diverted for maybe 1 or 2 days. Sometimes that depends totally on them. Once it's been done, Doing traffic shaping is also important. So best is to just declare when the attack is over, and then you involve your legal teams, because legal will play an important role to assess how much damage has occurred and what is the bottom line, how much bottom line is being hit. So that is something which I believe is really, really important. Ensure that there is a formal communication to all the customers as well as stakeholders, what happened, how it happened, what you did, what you're going to make sure that doesn't happen next time. Do we have a proper plan in place? Did we do all the right things? That is something which is very, very important. Some of the regulations as well as the law specifically for critical infrastructure of the country, like be it the telecom, be it banking or and financial sector, they are being advised to report in case if there is an attack on them to the regulators. So do the right thing, report this incident as per the law, work with forensics team to develop after highlighting the RCA and gaps, do all the correct things, make sure that you have highlighted the right RCA, correct RCA. Don't be under any sort of pressure situation in terms of not showing something which you believe needs to be shown. If there is a weakness, best is just to accept that there was a weakness. Management wants to know what was the vulnerability and what is the threat, and do we have right things in place to mitigate that threat. Even if it requires investigation, let it be, that's not a problem, because we need to do the right things. That is something which is really, really important in order for business to succeed. And as a security leader, it's always a learning. We it's a pressure-based situation. The CISOs are normally under pressure, because just one attack destroys the entire image of the country, destroys the entire even career of so many people. But that's been the flip side of being in this line. But again, people who love technology, people who love security will accept this risks. So make sure that you work with the forensic to you do what's right for you. You highlight what's the right things to do. You make sure all the gaps have been highlighted, even if it requires investments, even if it requires technology change, even if it requires people process change. Highlight it, do the best thing, do the right thing. So that is something which I always highlight. Motivate teams and be a listener. As I always mention, this is not the right time to blame people or accuse someone. Best is to motivate your team, be a people's manager, be a listener. This is something which is going to help you succeed more. This is something which is going to make sure that we have people with us, and organization is all about people. That is something which we need to focus upon. Third is highlight the RCA and gaps with corrective actions. So once we highlight the RCA, we also put the corrective actions. Based on that, organization needs to decide, or business needs to decide, or stakeholders needs to decide, do they need to allocate budget? Do they need to make sure that they need to put in more people, put in more investments? Or what is something which needs to be done? Because what happens when you buy a product, at that point of time, we buy that product based on 5 year or 7 year strategy, and that is the time we actually calculate the total cost of our purchasing power, a total cost of investment which we have done in particular product. That includes your hardware, that includes your mitigation, that includes your opex, that includes your capex, that includes people, training, awareness. Try to highlight things, and that is where you will come to know how much is the overall cost of investment in a product which you have made. So it is important for you to highlight the RCA and the gaps, in case if suppose there have been possibilities are there, we might be having the right solution in place, but people might not be aware what DDoS is all about. It happens in many of the organizations that you have the best of products, you have the best of partner vendors, you have the best of OEMs supporting you, but again, people are not aware what DDoS is all about. All they know about is that there is some availability issue with the product. So it helps you to identify the gaps, what needs to be done, so that you can take appropriate action. And it's not about every time any attack is not about investment. It's all about how much you know about it, what is something which you have done, what's something which you could have done better. So that is where I think it adds value. Again, as I said, motivates team, be a listener, initiate a plan for optimization. That is something which is very, very, very important. You need to ensure that whatever you're doing, there would be challenges, but we have to rebuild. As humans, we have always evolved. There have been so many calamities which happens, be it natural disaster, be it human-made disaster, but we have always rebuilt. So that is something which you need to ensure, that even if it is there, make sure you rebuild. The don'ts, which I always tell people from my point of view: don't forget things and relax. The attack is over, but at the same time you need to make sure that you move on, which is right thing to do. But how we can improve, that is something, what is best which I could have done, we need to ensure that as part of our learning. Don't ignore feedback. Even a even a small a junior person can give feedback. Be very open. Even seniors can give feedback, even business can give feedback, even a vendor can give feedback, even a partner can give feedback, or a ISP can give feedback. Possibility, there are so many instances where we have seen that a spectator might have given feedback, and that feedback actually adds value to the entire solution. So don't ignore feedback. Ensure that everybody is welcome to give you suggestions, solutions. Whether to take it or not take it, that is something which we need to take a call as a leader. But be open to feedbacks. That is something which is very, very important. Don't delay or outstanding actions. If something which is uh, part of my job, it's part of my job. And delaying unnecessary causes more confusion, unnecessary creates more pressure on the team, unnecessary creates more panic, it creates more frustration. Best is to be on time, ensure we do the right things, and don't delay. Don't overanalyze things. Now, majority of the time we have seen when people are under attack, and the attack is over, for months and months and months they will continue talking about only of that attack, and nothing has been documented. So we are analyzing, but we are not documenting. We are documenting, but we are not learning. Maybe we are learning, but we are not implementing. If we are implementing, we are not ensuring. So that is something which we need to do. Rather than overanalyzing, we need to ensure that we do the right things, we document it, we highlighted it, and we let business know, or we let people know that this is something which has been a learning. I need to make sure that I get the right things done. In case if there are any gaps, highlight them, highlight it to business, highlight it to the stakeholder. Whether you get investments, you don't get investments, that's entirely a separate case. So that is something which I want to highlight in my slide number 6. Overall, in terms of other areas, I think I have tried to cover almost all the people, process, and technology related things. From the law perspective, I've also tried to cover majority of the thing. Now, I have been talking about how do you add value to the business. I have been talking about how do you ensure that security becomes part of the culture. This is something which I am trying to highlight. We need to ensure that we have our deliverables which is based on outcomes. Until unless we don't have our deliverables which is based on outcomes, nobody, or even the business, or maybe the stakeholders, will not realize how security is adding value to the business. So as soon as you start, we need to think, where is my operations right now? What is something which I need to do in terms of my operational improvements? Do I have the right cyber drills? Do I have any documentation through which I have learned from experiences? If not, then what is something which I need to do to ensure that I get operational effectiveness, operational efficiency, as well as optimization of my resources? So this is something which we need to look into. Do I have the right resources in place? Do I have the right security posture in place? Do I have the right people in process? Do I have the right technology in place? What are the gaps? Have all the risk been highlighted to the management? What are my threat vectors? What is the impact of those threat vectors? Have the impact been highlighted to the business, be it reputational, be it the legal impact, be it financial impact? How much business is aware about? Is security even part of discussions? Is security even part of the board level discussions? That is something which needs to be looked upon. If not, then go back, ensure that you have a proper governance program in place. In terms of secure by design rollouts, in my first slide, I have always been talking about how we are going to make sure that security becomes an enabler to the business rather than being a showstopper. Ensure that whatever we do is the right thing. In terms of providing solutions, we ensure that we are going for smooth rollouts. We are going for new designs, and those designs are secure. That is where security engineering, secure architecture is going to come into play, secure by design. If we have security solutions which have been designed appropriately, we have appropriate security engineering in place. We know whether, even if suppose I have my application, which is an internet facing application, has captcha in place, has session management taken care of, has a proper authentication. You do OCRA or two-factor authentication, whichever works for you. That is something which will help you to design a smooth rollout. How you're ensuring that your database is secure, how you're ensuring that your application is speaking to the APIs, how APIs are secure. Do you have end-to-end security in place? How you are making sure that your PKI certificate, which is a third party, is being offloaded at your load balancer or whichever device you want to, and then re-encrypted with your company provided certificates. Where are the keys stored? How the keys have been stored? What type of devices have been used? Are the keys stored in the application? There are 100 areas which needs to be looked upon when you design a solution. That is where basically your expertise will come into the play as a security leader. You need to build that type of efficiency in the team. Next, which I need to talk about is new product and service offerings. Any new product which you are offering needs to have implementation. So first thing I talked about design and architecture, then you have a development model, and now you have a smooth rollout. So until unless you don't know what is the placement of your product, where this product needs to be placed, what it's going to do, how it's going to do, it will be very difficult for you to define the right approach for layered DDoS defense or a layered application defense. So this is something which I believe is very important for you in terms of product placement, where that application needs to be placed, how it needs to be played, what needs to be communicated. Is it in country application? Then I think best is to just block the IP addresses of other countries or neighboring countries, or maybe a threat vectoring countries, sorry, in terms of blocking those IP addresses, just to ensure it's adequately protected. In terms of future focus, this is something which all the cybersecurity like, and they love to talk about. They need to be with the market trends. You need to see we have evolved from a desktop PC to a terminal server. From terminal server, we have gone to thin client, thick client. We have been to cloud-based solution, data centers, cloud-based solutions, now IoT. Look at the journey which we have done in so many years and where we are right now. So the reason I'm talking about is we have evolved from Cat5 cables to wireless, from to mobile to 1G, 2G, 3G, and now 5Gs are coming in place. So we need to be future focused. Until and unless you're not future focused, it will be a big investment to again and again secure your solutions, to again and again ask for new investments from business. So ensure that we do the right things. If we take future things into consideration while designing the products. So that is something which is very important. If you have any areas which needs to be looked upon in terms of designing the right solutions, maybe I would just try to give an example. If you're trying to go for a website, we need to see whether the mobile version is also available or not. If yes, then how the content needs to be looked upon, how the API needs to communicate, what type of authentication needs to be looked upon. Do we need to have two-factor authentication or not? So this is something which needs to be looked upon, because many of the time, going to my next area, these things, data is going to impact the privacy of an individual, and that is where we need to protect our organizations from legal penalties, from privacy issues, from compliance requirements, from regulator issues. So this is something which we need to ensure that we have been. So many of the countries do and companies nowadays are doing contract reviews. They're ensuring that only country specific legal requirements have been taken care, making sure that whatever is the country specific laws have been adhered to. This is actually important to make sure that we avoid business from any penalties. But at the same time, as customers, because we as security leaders are also customers, but we need to ensure that we give our consent where our data has been used, how it's been used, which companies are using it, and what is something which they are doing it, for how long they are storing it. What is the destruction approach in case if I'm concerned about my privacy as such. So this is something we as a society also needs to look upon by valuing each other and making sure that we have the right mechanism and right process in place from legal privacy and compliance perspective, because outsourcing is a big business, and in outsourcing, if we respect each other's privacy, customers will be secure, customers will be safe. This was my presentation all about in terms of my outcome-based security. And outcome-based security, which I want to talk about, is broadly, which I have rather talked about, is broadly based approach in which you identify the security outcomes and you map them with the business requirement, so that you're looking for protecting, and you're also looking for enabling your business. Now, this is something which ideally covers understanding the risk, protecting, the ability to detect and minimizing. This entire slides, if we actually we practice and we ensure that we have things in place for this, it will actually help in effective cyber protection. And generally it doesn't needs a lot of expensive appliances, nor it needs any expensive equipments. It's more of practice. So this is what I just wanted to talk about in terms of my outcome based security. I also want to talk about whatever vendors you choose, whatever partners you choose, whatever systems you choose, it needs to be adequately mapped. All the threat vector needs to be looked upon, all the risks needs to be evaluated. Based on that, we see which is the best fit. It is not that vendors are good or bad. It is just about whether they are the right fit for us or not. Do they have the right business ethics and values? Will they be standing with us during bad times? Those are the parameters which needs to be looked upon. Technology is more or less almost the same. So this is what I want to talk about from outcome-based security. With this, I just want to thank all the audiences for listening to me. I just want to understand in case if any of the uh, members have any of the queries, audiences have any of the queries, I am more than happy to answer them. And I just want to thank you.